When Michael pushed his pregnant wife out onto the streets of Lagos for his secretary, just because she was a poor orphan, he believed he had made the right move. But 24 years later, fate weaves their lives together again in a way no one could predict. Can the strength of a mother's love stand against betrayal and years of heartbreak? Settle in as we journey through this gripping emotional tale. Chinelo looked up from the tiny baby clothes she was folding, a smile already forming. But Michael's face was unreadable, cold, like a stranger's. Her stomach tightened, not from the baby's kicks, but from dread. "I want a divorce." The sentence crashed into her like a falling brick. The soft socks she'd been holding slipped from her hands to the ground. "Michael, what are you saying?" "I've met someone else. Someone who fits into the life I'm building. Someone who gets it." His tone was dry and casual, like he was reading from a newspaper. "You have to leave. Tonight." The world spun around Chinelo. She clutched her belly, their unborn child fluttering inside her as if sensing danger. "Michael, please. I'm carrying your baby. We made promises. That child will do better without the weight your background would drag him down with." He turned his gaze elsewhere, avoiding her eyes. "Cynthia, my secretary, she's educated. Polished. She can raise brilliant kids, kids who'll actually have a future." His words cut like a blade. Chinelo dropped to her knees, grabbing the hem of his trousers. "Please, Michael. Think about our baby. I'll improve, I'll learn. Pack your things. Be gone in an hour." How had it come to this? Just 5 years ago, Michael had been a broke, entry-level banker who often ate at Mama Kemi's modest restaurant in Surulere, where Chinelo worked as a waitress. He had watched her serve food with warmth. He'd walked her home through dusty streets, held her hand, and spoke of building a future. "We're starting from scratch," he'd said on one of those long walks. "But together, we'll climb out of it." She believed him. She believed in his dreams before he wore tailored suits or had a nameplate on an office door. She pushed him to chase promotions, celebrated every milestone, supported him at every turn. Now that he had become a manager, dressed in fine clothes, sitting in a corner office, he discarded her like she meant nothing. That same night, Chinelo wandered the streets of Lagos with nothing but a battered suitcase and the clothes she wore. Her belly throbbed. Her baby shifted, restless, as if sensing the storm. She had no one, an orphan with no roof, no family. She walked until her feet were raw and swollen, eventually collapsing inside an abandoned structure in Ogaudu. The concrete was ice-cold against her spine as she wept until her tears dried. As morning painted Lagos in soft shades of gold, Chinelo placed both palms on her belly and made a quiet vow. "You won't pay for your father's sins," she whispered to the tiny life within. "I'll be strong enough for both of us." By sunrise, even with sore feet and an aching back, Chinelo started hunting for work. Every door she knocked on closed the moment they noticed her swollen stomach. But as dusk neared, she crossed paths with Mama Adani, an elderly fruit seller with warm eyes and time-worn hands, stationed outside Ogaudu Market. "Child, you look like you're about to faint," Mama Adani said, eyeing Chinelo's weary face. "When last did you eat?" Pride battled desperation in her chest. I'm looking for work, Ma. I can clean, sell, anything." "Sit down before you drop," the woman said firmly. She placed a ripe banana into Chinelo's hands. "Eat first. We'll talk after." As Chinelo quickly ate the banana, Mama Adani listened quietly, her expression shifting between anger at Michael's heartlessness and admiration for Chinelo's courage. "You'll sell for me," the old woman said firmly. "Take this tray of fruits. Go to the office complex near the post office. When you return my capital, whatever is left is yours." For the next 3 months, Chinelo hawked fruit with a fire in her that even Lagos's toughest vendors noticed. Her belly grew heavier, making every step harder, but she pushed on. Mama Adani watched the young woman with growing affection. Come stay with me, she offered one evening as Chinelo counted her small earnings. My room's tiny, but it's better than that abandoned place you're sleeping in. Chinelo's eyes welled with tears. Why are you helping me, Ma? Mama Aduni's face softened. Because 30 years ago, my husband's people threw me out for not bearing children. Nobody helped me then. But you remind me there's still good left in this world. Two women, generations apart but bonded by pain, became family. On a stormy Tuesday night in September, Chinelo's labor started. There was no money for a hospital. Mama Aduni became nurse and midwife, boiling water and tearing clean cloth as Chinelo gripped her hand, crying out. The baby arrived, loud and strong. He's beautiful, Mama Aduni whispered, laying the newborn on Chinelo's chest. What will you name him? Amika, Chinelo gasped, tears falling freely as she stared at her son's tiny face. He who has done great things, because he will, Ma. This child will do great things. Life with a newborn was a constant battle. Chinelo had to leave 6-week-old Amika with Mama Aduni while she went out selling fruit, rushing back every few hours to breastfeed. When he was old enough, she strapped him to her back and continued hustling, his joyful giggles following her like music. But just after Amika's first birthday, everything shifted. He spiked a fever that wouldn't drop. Then came the seizures, violent and terrifying. At Lagos University Teaching Hospital, the diagnosis struck like a hammer. It's meningitis. He needs urgent treatment, antibiotics, monitoring, maybe surgery. Cost, 150,000 Nigerian nairas. Chinelo had saved 75,000 Nigerian nairas for Amika's future education, but it wasn't enough. She collapsed in the hospital corridor, sobbing uncontrollably as Mama Aduni wrapped an arm around her. Take my savings, the older woman said without hesitation. All of it. That boy is mine too. Together, they scraped enough. Amika survived. But something in Chinelo changed forever. That night, she swore never to be powerless again when her son needed her. As Amika recovered, Chinelo worked even harder. She still hawked fruit but also washed clothes, swept streets, and carried heavy loads, anything to build a better life. She began saving, determined to start a business of her own. One sweltering afternoon near a Victoria Island construction site, she overheard workers grumbling about the awful food vendors. Nervous but bold, she approached the site supervisor, a broad-shouldered Yoruba man named Mr. Betrayal. Excuse me, sir. What if I bring hot, tasty food for your workers at a good price? I promise quality. He gave her a skeptical look, but her confidence caught his attention. You want to feed 50 hungry men? Just one chance, sir. If they don't like it, you don't pay. The next day, Chinelo arrived with pots of jollof rice, fried plantains, and grilled chicken that filled the air with delicious aroma. The workers cleared every plate and asked when she'd be back. Word spread fast. Within 2 months, Chinelo was supplying meals to 3 sites. She hired 2 other women, rented a small kitchen, and finally moved into a decent room with Amika. Young Amika watched his mother rise with wide-eyed wonder. By 5, he was helping serve food after school, learning how to count change and treat customers with care. He noticed how his mother always fed hungry strangers and never turned anyone away. Mama, why do you give food to people who can't pay? He asked one evening as they walked home. Because once, we had nothing too, she replied gently. Success is meant to lift others, not crush them. Amika never heard his mother insult his father. When he asked about the man who gave him life, Chinelo would only say, your father made his choices. But you, Amika, you'll make better ones. By 10, Amika was the top student in his public school. By secondary school, he earned a scholarship to one of the best private schools in Lagos. Teachers admired his discipline, kindness, and quiet drive to make his mother proud. Meanwhile, Chinelo's business continued to grow. Her reputation for clean, tasty meals spread across the area. She saved every naira, and by Amika's final year of secondary school, she had bought a plot of land in Ape and built a real restaurant. The Golden Pot became known all over Lagos for authentic local dishes and warm hospitality. Now in her late 60s, Mama Adunni watched their rise with tears in her eyes. Chinelo had moved her into their new home, and opened a fruit shop in her name, but the old woman preferred spending her days at the restaurant, sharing stories with customers and showering Amika with affection, filling the role of the grandmother he had never known. While their lives blossomed in one corner of Lagos, Michael Okafor's world was quietly falling apart. His marriage to Cynthia had started like a dream, an extravagant wedding, ties to wealthy families, and a life that turned heads. But Cynthia was not the sweet, loyal secretary she had once seemed. She was strategic, power-hungry. And when Chief Adebayo, a billionaire oil mogul, 15 years her senior, took an interest in her, she saw a golden ladder to climb. Michael, a mere bank manager, suddenly became disposable. But Cynthia wasn't just going to leave. She wanted to destroy him, and profit while doing it. With cold precision, she collected proof of the money Michael had secretly siphoned to maintain their luxurious lifestyle. Then, she vanished, after reporting him anonymously to the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission and taking what was left of the stolen money. Michael, blinded by pride and desire, never imagined that the woman he adored was orchestrating his ruin. The EFCC raid came without warning, on a Monday morning. He was dragged out of his office in handcuffs, in front of the same junior staff he used to belittle. The evidence was undeniable. Michael was convicted and sentenced to 8 years in Kirikiri prison. In his tiny, stifling cell, he had nothing but silence, and memories. He thought of Chinelo's gentle voice, her encouragement when he was still a nobody, her patience waiting up at night. He thought of the child he had never laid eyes on, the life he had thrown away for an illusion. Meanwhile, Amika graduated with first-class honors in engineering. At 24, he secured a job with one of Nigeria's most elite consulting firms. At his graduation ceremony, Chinelo could barely hold back tears. She remembered the nights spent studying with him by candlelight, balancing his homework with the demands of her growing food business. "Mama, everything I am, it's because of you," Amika said, placing his degree certificate in her hands. "You made sure I never felt like something was missing. Even though I didn't have a father." Chinelo kissed his forehead, her chest swelling with pride. "You never lacked anything that mattered, my son. Love is what builds a person. Love, and determination." When Michael was finally released, after serving every day of his sentence, he was 51. But prison had drained his soul. He looked closer to 70. With no savings, no home, and a record that followed him like a shadow, he wandered the streets of Lagos Island, sleeping under bridges and begging for coins from people who barely glanced at him. One blistering Thursday afternoon, Amika was leaving his office on Victoria Island when he noticed an elderly beggar slumped by the side of a building. Something about the man's defeated posture struck a chord. There was pain in his eyes, eyes that once had drive but now held only shame. "Sir," Amika called softly, walking over. "Are you hungry?" The man looked up, his voice barely above a whisper. "Please, anything you can give." "Come with me," Amika said, kindly. "Let me buy you something warm to eat." He helped the old man up and led him down the road to the Golden Pot, unaware that the person beside him was the very man who had abandoned him before he took his first breath. As they stepped into the bustling restaurant, Chinelo looked up from behind the cash register, and froze. Time seemed to pause. She stared at the worn, broken man standing beside her successful son. In an instant, 25 years disappeared. She was once again that pregnant girl, begging in the cold Lagos night. "Michael," she breathed. Amika's head snapped toward her, then turned to the beggar at his side. His eyes narrowed in disbelief and rage. You're my father." Michael's voice trembled as the truth struck him. "Chinelo, is this our son?" Don't call me that, Amika snapped. You left us. You left my mother, pregnant and alone, with nothing. Please. I never meant. I don't want to hear it. I don't ever want to see you again. Amika stormed out, fury in his steps, leaving Michael collapsed in shame and Chinelo staring after her son with tearful eyes. Later that evening, she found Michael still sitting just outside her restaurant. She brought him a plate of food and sat beside him on the concrete steps. I'm sorry, Michael whispered, his gaze fixed on the ground. I threw away everything that mattered, for things that meant nothing. I see what you've built, what you've raised. I don't deserve forgiveness. Chinelo was silent for a while, watching the Lagos traffic blur past. I forgave you a long time ago, Michael. Not for your sake, for mine. Holding on to that pain would have ruined everything good I had left. But Amika, he's hurting. He's carried the weight of your abandonment all his life, even though I tried to protect him from it. He just needs time. That night, in their cozy living room, Chinelo and Mama Adunni sat down with Amika. My son, Chinelo said softly, anger is a heavy thing to carry. I know you're hurting, but if you hold on to it too long, it'll harden you. He doesn't deserve forgiveness, Mama. After everything he did to you. And yet, Mama Adunni added gently, look at where we are. Look what you and your mother have built. You're thriving. She's thriving. We're a family. His mistakes don't hold power over us anymore, unless you let them. It took Amika 3 days. 3 days of wrestling with the storm inside him before he returned to that same corner, where Michael sat hunched, more broken than before. I've decided to forgive you, Amika said without any build-up. Not because you earned it, but because I refuse to let your choices control my life. Michael looked up, hope flickering in his tired eyes. Does that mean? It means I forgive you. But I'm 24. I've already passed the stage where I needed a father. You can't undo 24 years with a few words. He handed Michael a small card. This is for a rehab center that helps ex-convicts rebuild. If you want to change, really change, start there. Earn redemption with your actions, not your apologies. 5 years later, the golden pot was packed for its usual Sunday dinner. Amika, now a successful consultant with his own firm, sat at the long table with his wife Adiz and their 2 young children. Chinelo, now the proud owner of 3 restaurants across Lagos, served steaming plates of jollof rice and pepper soup with her usual warmth. Mama Adunni, now in her 80s but as spirited as ever, entertained the children with old tales that made them laugh. Michael wasn't at the table. But he had completed the rehabilitation program and found work as a security guard at a small business. He lived quietly, occasionally sending polite letters to Amika, notes that were distant but sincere. The bond they never had remained a scar, healed, but visible. Yet as Chinelo looked around the table, the family born of love, endurance, and forgiveness, she understood something profound. Some stories don't end with perfect reunions. Sometimes, the happy ending is found in the love that survives. In the dreams that rise from hardship. In the son you raise to be strong, not by stepping on others, but by lifting them. Mama, Amika said, reaching across the table to hold her hand, thank you for teaching me that a person's worth isn't about where they came from, but how they choose to love. Chinelo smiled, her heart full of a wealth that no money could ever buy. Outside, Lagos moved with its usual chaos and noise. But inside the golden pot, surrounded by the family she fought to keep, and the one that fought for her, she had everything that truly mattered. The strength of a mother's love, she had learned, could survive betrayal, endure loss, and build a future from nothing. And that was the greatest lesson she could pass on to her son. Not just how to forgive, but how to love without limits. Dream without fear. And build something beautiful. From absolutely nothing but courage.